Beginning with the end in mind, we're going to be making these really cool sleigh bells. Don't they look awesome? To get started on this project, our focus is going to be making it with value. So put your name at the bottom of the paper and just start drawing out some bows for your bell project. I'm going to go ahead and grab some different oil pastel colors, dark green, light green, black, and white. And my goal is to make these look like evergreen, the greenery that you would see on a tree. And so as I took my green, my dark green, the more lines that I add, the more fuller it looks. I want to take a moment and show a non-example. When you put your green onto the stems of the evergreen, you want to do more at a diagonal line, not like a train tracks. See the difference between the first one and the second one? Again, you want to almost think about it more like an arrow. Some lines go directionally down and some lines go diagonally up. And when you see that, it really starts to look like an evergreen tree. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue taking my green lines and going directions from one side to the other, again, like an arrow. Those lines should be diagonally down and diagonally up at an angle. Now I'm going to go ahead and start taking in my lighter green. And again, I'm thinking about value. We've done a value scale and we've tried some different shapes with a value. So when I apply color to my project, I want one side to look like it's lighter than the other side. The side where it looks like sun or the light source is hitting the object. That part's going to be a little bit lighter than the other side. So the other side, I just added some black to make it a little bit darker. Lastly, an optional choice is kind of fun if you want to take a little bit of paint and start adding on to make it look like some snow onto your evergreen trees, onto your evergreen bows. If you want to use some of that white paint into your background as well, and you want to start painting on some snowflakes, maybe some dots, you can go ahead and do that as well. As soon as you're finished putting on the white paint onto your project, go ahead and set that into the drying rack and you can move on to the next step. This is a project that I did of sleigh bells a few years ago, and I thought to myself, it might be kind of cool to take a look at how I use value in my own artwork. So setting that aside, I'm going to go ahead now and get some colored pieces of construction paper, again from the supply table, a cup or a circle template, and start tracing around the circles. I want to do a circle first, and just like the directions say on the board, we're going to go ahead and draw a curved line to get started on the bell, and then two crisscross patterns at the bottom with two dots. Can you see that up close? That's what I'm going to be using to make it look like my sleigh bells. I'm going to go ahead and do this 5 more times. The amount of how many sleigh bells you do is totally up to you. I just started out with 5. You can do, I'd say as few as 3. I don't want any less than 3, but 5 is a pretty good amount. If you only want 4, then do 4. It's really pretty much your choice how many sleigh bells that you want. I've outlined this one in black Sharpie just so that you guys can go ahead and take a look at, again, the end in mind. We want to show some value onto our project. And so now that I've got my sleigh bell shape, I'm going to grab some chalk pastels. I don't want to use the same exact color as the paper. I want to go just a little bit darker. This is where I start thinking about when I used pencil and we began drawing our shapes and making those look like value. I'm going to do the same thing, only today it's in color. So my construction paper is orange. I took the next darker color, which is red, and now I'm going to start blending and smoothing the highlights of white with the red into my orange piece of construction paper. It really does a nice job of showing the value changes. Darker on the sides and a white value to make it look like that light source is hitting that 3-dimensional object. My paper doesn't look quite so flat or like a flat piece of paper anymore, but now those value changes really help make it look 3D. I love the way that looks. I'm going to do the same thing with all the rest of my papers. Again, choosing the color that's a little bit darker than the paper, the white for the highlights, and a black oil pastel to make it darker. On my green paper, I chose a dark green and a blue to mix for the darker shade into my bell. And again, outlining it with black oil pastel. I want to take a moment and take a second and talk a little bit about what not to do. This is what you do not want to do on your piece of paper. When I have my bell, I do not want to take the darker color and the white and draw just vertical lines onto my project. See how flat that still looks? It looks very striped. I've got an area that's green and an area that's white, and this is not showing value changes whatsoever. This is an example of what not to do. There's no blending, there's no shading, so think about that value scale of going lights to dark and gently blend those colors together. On my red paper, I started taking some purple and red and started mixing those as well as the white. Again, my whole purpose is making it look like it's round, darker on the sides, lighter in the middle. Lastly, I'm going to go ahead and start cutting out my objects and getting ready to assemble.